2016 election. And just about 365 days ago, last January, the Senate Intelligence Committee got the ball rolling. Their first big move? Remember this? January 10th. That's when then FBI Director James Comey and other officials testified in an open hearing, with Comey saying he could not comment in public on this possible investigation into links between Russia and the Trump campaign. So fast forward a year. Comey is out, Robert Mueller is in, and now you have this. Partisan divisions threatening to stall those House and Senate investigations. Republicans mostly want to wrap things up, probably early this year, but Democrats say they need more time. Plus, there have been more Republican attacks working to undermine the credibility of special counsel Robert Mueller, but not within the entire GOP, and that is creating some new divisions, too. My colleague Garrett Hake is still down in sunny South Florida, West Palm Beach, where the president is today, heading home later on this afternoon. Garrett, over the holidays, we've heard a lot from the president about how he feels about these investigations. But what about members of Congress? Talk through where you think their heads are going to be when they get back later this week and next week here to Washington.
Yeah, Hallie, it's sort of a tale of two houses and how the two chambers in Congress have treated this investigation. In the House side, it's very much as you described. There has been significant partisan infighting about the direction the committee should take as it investigates the Russia angle, about who they should call as witnesses, about how those witnesses should be treated, and specifically about how long that probe should continue. Republicans have been scheduling multiple witnesses on the same day at times to try to move that probe along. Devin Nunes, who had stepped back from it for a while, the chairman of that committee, has reasserted himself to a certain degree. Democrats are discouraged by the fact that it looks like that effort may wrap up sooner than they would like to see. The Senate side is another animal altogether. They have proceeded in a very bipartisan way for the most part going forward. Democrats have even praised Richard Burr, the chairman of that committee, for the distance he has kept personally from the White House and to the degree to which he has held the line on trying to make that a nonpartisan investigation. Mitch McConnell, the majority leader, has said that effort will go on as long as necessary. And on the Senate side, too, even over the last couple days, from allies of the president, like Lindsey Graham, for example, who has become a golfing buddy and somebody who the president listens to, saying, we need to make sure Robert Mueller does his job. We need to do our jobs in the Senate to not put artificial timelines on finishing that effort. So I think the Senate side will continue to be the place to watch on those investigations when they get back later this week.
And I know you will be watching that when you get back, hopefully later today, my friend, after a long stretch for you down there. Appreciate it. Joining our panel here on set is Matt Miller, MSNBC justice and security analyst, former spokesperson for the Department of Justice, and father of a toddler who kept him up at, what, 6 in the morning?
6 in the morning.
So thank you for joining us on New Year's Day. I figure that's why you're here. So talk through some of this here, because you have the head of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Richard Burr, and Garrett makes the smart point about there is a question about people saying, hey, no artificial timelines. But he says he thinks things will basically wrap up early this year. According to the Wall Street Journal, he has not decided what his committee is going to do with the information they've gathered. What should he do? Are we ever going to see a report on all this?
They ought to write a report. Look, there are two things that need to happen here for both the House and Senate Intelligence Committee. One, they need to try to figure out what happened. Not just what did Russia do, but was there any cooperation, any collusion on behalf of the president or his allies? But if they can't get to the bottom of that question, if that's really a question for Bob Mueller,
it
may very well be. He has much stronger ability, much stronger resources to get to the bottom of that question than they do. There is a policy question that is firmly in the realm of the United States Congress, and that's what to do to prevent these kind of hacks, these kind of attacks on our election going forward. And we haven't heard much of that yet, and we haven't seen much interest from the Republican majority in going down that path.
Play devil's advocate for a second here, because there are those who might look at these congressional committees and say, listen, they've interviewed Jared Kushner. They've interviewed Donald Trump Jr. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing. That's kind of the big names of the inner circle here. So why wouldn't they wrap things up in early 2018?
If they have actually conducted every interview they need to do and have conducted follow-up interviews, if they've gotten answers that are contradictory other witnesses, they need to go back and conduct follow-up interviews. But if they're trying to rush things through like the House Intelligence Committee is doing, and more importantly, if they're done really investigating what happened in the election and they're now turning to investigate the investigators and trying to go after Bob Mueller, they might as well wrap things up, because they're not doing any good for the country.
Speaking of the questions that are being raised now about the special counsel investigation, you have seen this more and more, this rift in the Republican Party about, even if it's not a direct attack on Bob Mueller, it's sort of the questioning of the Department of Justice overall. There was something that happened a week ago, almost, on this show that has driven a lot of the conversation with Congressman Francis Rooney when he said this. Listen.
I would like to see the directors of those agencies purge it and say, look, we've got a lot of great agents, a lot of great lawyers here. Those are the people that I want the American people to see and know the good work's being done, not these people who are kind of the deep state.
So the reaction there is because purge is a serious word. I gave the congressman an opportunity to immediately walk it back. I said, really? You really want to go there and say the word purge? And he chose not to, although later in the week I think he ended up sort of sophening it a little bit. But do you see that kind of rhetoric growing in the beginning part of the year, Kyle?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's actually a piece of what we've heard from a lot of Republican allies of the president in Congress. We've heard Representative Matt Gaetz in Florida has described a potential coup d'etat against the president. We've heard people like Louis Gohmert from Texas talk about, and literally go down a list of names of members of the FBI, senior leadership at the FBI, and ask the director if they're biased against the president. And it's just this climate that they're creating of hostility that I think especially Republican allies of the FBI and Democrats as well say is really pernicious and could lead to lasting effects on people's trust in their institutions.
Abby.
What I would add is the midterms are here. The Texas primary is the first in the country, and it's 2 months away. And you're going to start seeing in these House races candidates, incumbents trying to shore up the base with the Trump folks to win.
By using this as an issue.
And I could see that happening, and that's causing a great deal of consternation within the Republican. This is a group that prides itself on backing law enforcement.
You talk about where we are in the House, and I think Garrett rightly notes that there is a difference between the Senate and the House. So what about Devin Nunes and his return here? The Washington Post reports his reemergence has raised alarm among some Democrats on the Intelligence Committee, as Nunes comes back to that committee, obviously is a lead Republican on it. Based on what you know, what power does and doesn't he have right now?
He has full power of that committee. He can subpoena any witness he wants to. He can bring people in for hearings. He has the full unfettered power of the chairman. And to this question about a rift among Republicans, I don't buy that for 1 second.
Why not?
Republican leadership are good at telling reporters on background and off the record that they don't like the way that Devin Nunes has handled things. If Paul Ryan really didn't like the way Devin Nunes is handling this investigation, he could remove him. He could push him off of it. Same for people like Trey Gowdy, Chuck Grassley, the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. They're doing many of the same things that Devin Nunes are doing in terms of going to war with the FBI and questioning the special prosecutor's mandate, but they're doing it in less obviously transparent ways. They're just less incompetent versions of Devin Nunes.
You have Robert Mueller, meanwhile, because you have what's happening in Congress, whatever's going on there. You also have what's happening with Robert Mueller. And the president, you've said on this show, actually, that this does not end without Bob Mueller interviewing the president. Last week, the president said he had this absolute right, quote unquote, to do what I want to do with the Justice Department. That was one of the eyebrow-raising comments in the New York Times interview last week. Adam Schiff is responding now, ranking member on House Intel, saying, no, you don't. You can do what you want with your golf courses, but the country and its Justice Department belong to the American people. Okay, you have a different take.
In a way, they're both right. Look, the president is right when he says, technically speaking, he's right when he says he has an absolute right to do what he wants with the Justice Department.
And you're not a guy who's often come on this show and said the president is correct.
No,
so.
there is nothing in the Constitution, nowhere in statute, no regulation that prevents him from directing the Justice Department to investigate or not investigate whoever. There is a long-standing norm that prevents presidents from doing that. They're not supposed to behave that way.
Why would we talk about norms this year, starting 2018, when what we saw in 2017 was, as Peter Baker and the Times points out in that great piece this weekend, this is a president who has blown up all the norms.
That is exactly right. And this may be one that he tries to blow up as well. It is incumbent on the American people through their elected representatives in Congress to tell him, if you try to blow up this norm, we have the right to impeach you and remove you from office.
But as Abby points out, the midterms will be the test of whether the American voters are sending that message or not. Matt?